I would like to invite up on the stage our next speaker, who is going to talk about innovation and the digital age. What role can insurers play here? With me to discuss this is Adrian Guttridge. Hi. He's the Executive Director for Exchanging Global Insurance Services. Now, Adrian, to build on this previous panel, data and tech kind of go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, we're going to talk a bit about tech, but maybe you can start with just a general overview of the current state of technology within the insurance industry.
Yeah, I think when we look at insurance, it's in three major parts. So I think property and casualty, life and pensions, including wealth, and then commercial and specialty are actually quite different. So if you look at P&C first, then you very much see comparison sites, which are pretty innovative, and things like telematics coming through. If you look at life and pensions, they're very much personalisation, and the previous panel talked a little bit about that. But actually, all the regulatory changes that are coming in, around pensions in particular, and also around equity release, makes that quite a difficult environment, I think, right now. If then you look at the commercial and specialty market, which is largely where exchanging plays in terms of supporting the London markets, then really historically that's been very relationship-based. And really looking at straight-through processing, how can we get data from brokers through to carriers much more easily, more consistently, capturing that data early and once. So I think it does vary, actually, when you look across the different groups.
And, I mean, without wanting to be too harsh on this industry, it does have a bit of a name of being conservative, risk-averse, perhaps not at the front line of change, for good reasons, as we just discussed with the previous panel, not jump on the first hype. But why has it been lagging behind so much? And can you take us through its historical role there a bit?
I think it's interesting when you compare it with banking, and I've got a banking background as well. And interestingly, I graduated in computer science 30 years ago. And I remember the first project I worked on was putting in the CHAPS system, Clearinghouse Automated Payment System, which was same-day clearance of large payments. And I checked back, actually, in January, the average payments are going through at £250 billion a day, which is pretty impressive. But, that for insurance today, when you look at it, would still be quite innovative to do full straight-through processing on the same day. And banking introduced that 30 years ago. I think in banking, you see a little bit more collaboration. I think also some banks want to be early adopters and are willing to invest earlier to be there, where I think in insurance it's a little bit different. I think also the speed is an important element. In banking, you need that speed of transaction. It has to be accurate every time. I think in insurance, particularly in the commercial and specialty markets, because it is about trust, then what's more important is that you're going to keep to your word. My word is my bond. And I think that's, therefore, the speed at which the policy follows through, for example, is not quite as important as it is in banking. Yeah. And therefore, you haven't really had the compelling event to drive technology change.
And I think most people will agree that some sort of culture shift will probably be necessary. I'm not suggesting that insurance leads at the front lines, but it will need to evolve a bit. Are you encouraged by the changes in the industry? Is it when it comes to tech? Is it?
It is. So we're seeing quite a lot in terms of people more interested in adoption. But I think that's the issue. I think there's a lot of technology there. And in fact, the insurance market is highly innovative in terms of the new products it takes to market. And the previous panel talked about cyber, for example. That's great. And certainly in exchanging, we've launched quite a few new products just recently. So one is around net settlement. So in the London markets, we actually process about £50 billion worth of policies and claims a year. And actually we net that down to about 9 billion. So that saves just over 40 billion in terms of capital being held by the market. So we launched a product for the global market there. So RSA are the first to take that up. But market adoption, getting other people onto that platform is pretty key. And we see that with some of the other products we've taken to market as well. So we have a mobility platform where, for the London markets, we sit on about 40 million claims records. And we've been able to put those onto an iPad that allows brokers and underwriters to interact in the market. So they don't have to do that just purely on the underwriting floor. But that's getting that going, getting that real interest. So several hundred people already using that platform. But again, getting greater adoption is always the issue. And I think, again, it's about what drives people's behaviour. What's the compelling event to make them want to do that?
Yeah, and if you look forward now, will it indeed take some sort of a crisis or a disruptor coming in and eating the industry's cake? Or how are you going to force this?
I think you're right. I think it has been fairly slow burn in terms of adoption of technology. I think there could be some disruptors. Interestingly, the previous panel talked about driverless cars. And you look at what Google have been doing there. It's interesting, actually, on the next panel, there is somebody from Google, so you have to ask him the question. But, if you look at driverless cars and how the onus of responsibility could shift from the driver to the software provider into the car manufacturer, and it's highly likely Google will, license their software to those motor manufacturers, then what happens? Does the driver's policy premium drop a lot because they're less in control? It's now the software. And then with somebody the size of Google, do they self-insure? And so does a whole raft of insurance just basically move out of the market? That's a huge disruption. And I was doing a bit of research to see, actually, could the tech companies afford to self-insure? And just in 2013, 3 of the big giants, Microsoft, Apple, and IBM, increased their unrepatriated cash. So this is cash they've got outside of the US that they haven't brought back in, by $36 billion in 1 year, in these countries. It's a huge amount of money. And across the top 300 corporations from the US, they've got $1.9 trillion of unrepatriated cash, partly because it costs them a lot of money to bring it back into the US and in the way it's taxed. But, in terms of could there be disruptors, and particularly around the tech firms, deciding to self-insure, then theoretically it's possible. Whether they will is a different question, of course, because do they want to turn into being an insurer or not? But,
we'll ask Google in a second.
But certainly it's fascinating. That's where you start to see huge disruption that could occur.
And if you're, in the previous panel we were talking about how do you get, not so much silos, but how do you get a whole organisation to think data frontline. Similarly with tech, how can you encourage, is the solution a silo? I think your answer will probably be no, but how do you encourage, A, the funding goes to the right places, and B, that the whole value chain perhaps incorporates tech into its process more?
Well, the way we approach that, we talk to our clients, very much brokers and carriers, about what are the key challenges they face. Are there some solutions that we can come up with that would help that? Then developing a proof of concept, trying that out, and then getting early adopters to come in and use that new service or platform. So that's the way we tend to approach it, which in some ways can be a fairly low risk approach, because if the proof of concept doesn't work out, then you can halt and stop and change. Because often when you're looking at some of these new ideas, you're never sure which ones are truly going to take off. So sometimes you need to follow quite a few bets before you're sure which one is going to be adopted.
And following different bets, similar question to before, but do you think for the industry as a whole, and for you in particular, it makes more sense if you've got a pot of money allocated for this to give seed money to lots of, say, startups, or does it make more sense to run things in-house?
Yeah, and that's very interesting about incubation ideas and how you fund some of that. So often you will do a mix, really. For example, we'll do some that's self-funded ourselves. Other times we'll get clients to come in with us, and there'll be some sort of incentive for them then if it takes off. We'll also do joint ventures. So there's a variety of different models that you can actually adopt there.
Yeah. And as a non-IT specialist, when we're talking about tech, I quite quickly think of the hardware of the wearables, the phone, etc. Yeah. But I imagine an awful lot of this is about software as well.
It is. Software is key, although you're right. The panel also previously we were talking about Internet of Things. And some of the things that are available now are quite scary. So you can get a sensor that goes in your tooth. So if you're claiming that you are a smoker, so you get an enhanced annuity, actually that can be detected whether you do smoke or not. Or you say, I have a really good diet, but actually you don't. And this is just going to change things as well. But it is a bit like Big Brother as well. You have to be a bit careful, I think.
There are, well, actually on that, I didn't have a chance to ask the previous panel. The regulation around what you right now can and can't use of whatever your guys have found.
Yes.
Do you feel it's clear enough right now? And if so, would you like a bit more clarity?
So I think in general, regulation is always slower than the technology becoming available. I think governments are slow to regulate around a lot of tech. I think, though, around data in particular, and this is key, that the Data Protection Act does protect customers' data and consumers from that. So very much, for example, the work that we do in the London markets, we are a data processor, not a data owner. So when we're looking at analytics and unlocking some of that 40 million records I talked about, a lot of unstructured data there, how can we use predictive analytics against that? Then actually we do seek permission from the market first. We can't just go and use it. So I think there's protection around data to a certain degree. I do think there's a new bow wave of technology coming down that there isn't sufficient regulation in place just yet.
Before I open it up to these guys, if you look ahead a little bit for the coming, I don't know, decade or so,
yes.
What types of innovation does the industry most need, particularly when it comes to tech, and where are you hopeful? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I think there are certain themes that already started that haven't yet really hit. So mobility would be one, personalisation. I think we'll see a lot more around automation and robotics. We've introduced 10 robots in our organisation, actually, and that gives you 24/7 processing. It means for some menial tasks you can replace that. And actually gives an alternative to offshoring, in fact, as well. So I think we'll see a lot more of that happen over the next 3 to 5 years. I think longer term, though, you've got some of these big disruptors that could occur if the industry changes. So there's a variety there.
Right, let's open it up. Tech and the insurance sector. Who's got a question? Not at the moment. Well, then we've stunned them into silence. We'll keep going for a bit. I wonder whether, for you, this obviously it's been an evolution. You haven't suddenly discovered tech. How much, again, this is changing your hiring, the type of people you're bringing into the organisation, the type of skills, and how difficult are they to find?
Yes, very much so. So two areas, business analysts in particular, but also data scientists as well. Actually, the previous panel talked about that. So we're recruiting quite a few people with PhDs in statistics, that sort of area, to really unlock the data and understand, often it's trying to understand what question do we need to ask, because there could be trends hidden in the data that you don't even know. And it's people with the ability to look at that and unlock some of that real information and value.
And do they want to come and work for an insurance company, people with those skills? It's not a rhetorical question, no, it's a genuine.
Yeah, because there is a mine of data that's sitting there, waiting to be analysed and looked at.
Yeah. So you're not having trouble recruiting the right. And on sort of the wider competitive question, which you've already mentioned, are you yourself more worried about your competitors in the room here? Ultimately, sorry, this is a bit of an off-the-record conversation. It's fine. There's no journalist here. Are you more concerned about these guys, or are you more concerned indeed about the slightly more far-away disruptors who are not currently in insurance?
Well, first, of course, we're not an insurer per se, so neither a broker nor do we take the risk. So we're a service provider. Sure. So what we would see as our competitors are actually some of the tech companies as well. Can they take tech solutions to market faster than we can? Now, one of the things we do actually, because we wrap our whole service to our clients, we actually work with a lot of third-party software suppliers, wrap services around those, take those to market. So it's about tapping into that insight, predicting what's coming up in the future, anticipating that also by understanding what your client's challenges are and doing that sort of solution. But we have no intention of becoming an insurance company in the short term.
Yeah, that sounds pretty sensible. Right, well, if there are no further questions, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Adrian.
Lovely.